everyone. The NCTM article that I chose to review today is called Mapping a Way to Decimal Understanding, and it was written by Paula Denton. So in this article, she talked about how she had a two-step project in her classroom where students worked with Cuisenaire rods to create handmade metric measuring tapes, and then they used those tapes and the rods to construct a scale map of their own classroom. She then went on to talk about how the number lines, which were actually the metric measuring tapes, are an important model for supporting student understanding of fractions and the decimals. Okay, so part one of this project was the actual introduction of the Cuisenaire rods and the metric measurement and decimal notation. So she introduced the measurement by stating that the length of one white rod is 1 centimeter, and then she asked the students to show her rods that were 10 centimeters, 7 centimeters, and so forth. After they kind of understood that concept, she told them to combine their rods with the partners and use them to build a train of rods that is 1 meter long. So they noticed that they could use 10 orange centimeter rods, 10 centimeter rods. So in the article it says that's 10 centimeters or 10 1/100ths of a meter, but it's also 1/10 of a meter. In the metric system, we call 1/10 of a meter a decimeter. So after she explained this, she wrote the fractions on the board next to next to the decimal notation. Okay. All right. And in these figures right here, this talks, well, it shows what the Cuisenaire rods look like if you're unfamiliar. And then here's actually what she wrote on the board in this figure 2 right here. It shows the item that they measured, the fraction, and then the decimal. Okay. All right. So after they did this, they made their metric measuring tapes, and she gave each student a ribbon and then a pen, and this is how they marked their measuring tapes using the Cuisenaire rods. It says, use the rods to make a measuring tape that is 1 meter long and can measure things to the nearest centimeter. So this was their task in their measuring tape. Part 2, this was the actual creation of a scale map of the classroom. So she told them they were going to make a map of their classroom using the Cuisenaire rods and the centimeter graph paper. And then the first step was to find the measurements of all the parts of the classroom that they wanted to include on their map. So if we go down in the article, here was a measurement log, and these were the items they measured. This was their length in centimeters, decimeters, and then meters. Okay. And they came up with this list all together. Okay. She had them do this in pairs, and they signed up to indicate the items that they wanted to measure and record. And then together they did the model of their classroom. It said, as they work, they continue to develop a concrete visual and kinesthetic model for A, the relationship between fractions and decimals, B, metric lengths expressed as whole numbers as well as fraction and decimal amounts depending on the metric unit, and C, equivalent amounts expressed as whole numbers or to the tenths or hundredths place as decimals. And while they did this, she observed and assessed them. Okay. She noted what they did and what they did not do. This kind of showed what they understood and what they didn't understand yet about metric measurement and then the decimal fractions. Okay, next was building the map. Once they had their measurements, the students, they built the map. She taped together multiple sheets of graph paper and then laid it on a grid on a table with a tub of Cuisenaire rods, and she told the children that on their map, 1 decimeter or 1 orange rod will represent 1 meter in the actual classroom. So they had a 1 to 10 scale. Okay. And the article went on to talk about some issues. Some of the issues were dealing with the actual ratio. Kids kind of had trouble understanding that. And then some of the items, it said, how do we place objects that are not flush against corners into correct relationship to each other? They kind of struggled with that too. Okay, here's what they did with the Cuisenaire rods. And then here's what their final classroom map looked like. So I teach kindergarten, so I wouldn't be able to use this right away, but I would definitely use this in 3rd grade when I was trying to teach decimals. It's something that I always struggled with, and so this actually made a lot of sense to me, and I could see students making connections to the map and their actual learning. So and making those connections is the way that students learn. So I thought this was an awesome activity. Thanks for listening.